Audio Jungle.
The introduction of this book. What is the logic? Logic is the discipline that aims to distinguish good reasoning from bad. Good reasoning is not necessarily effective reasoning. In logic, the standard of goodness is not effectiveness in the sense of persuasiveness, but rather correctness according to logical rules. Logic is the study of information and code in the form of logical statements. Each logical statement divides the set of all possible words into two subsets. The set of words in which the statement is true, and the set of words in which the set of sentence is false. Conclusion if and only if the conclusion is true in any words where all that premise are true. Deductive is a form of symbolic reasoning that produces conclusions that are logically implied by premise, which is distinguishing it from other parts of reasoning, such as induction, abduction, and analogical reasoning. A proof is a sequence of simple, more or less obvious, deductive steps that justify a conclusion that may not be immediately obvious from certain premise. In logic, we typically encode logical pieces of information as sentences in formal language, and we use appropriate inference rules for this language. Such representation and formal methods are useful to us. Moreover, they allow us to automate the deduction process, although the computability of such implementation varies with the complexity of the sentence involved.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Abdul Muiz Rizqari, episode number 1201879. Detail of the book. The title of this book is called Introduction to Logic by Michael Jennifer and Eric Howe. The publisher of this book is Morgan and Crapo Publisher. Year of publication is 2013. This book is second edition and have 181 pages and 10 chapters.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Elmi bin Semi, and today I want to talk about chapter 1 in Logic book. First of all, this chapter is an overview of logic as presented in this book, and this book starts with an introduction to the key concepts of logic using sentences written in English. Then talk about the value of using a formal language for expressing logical information, and then talk about the formal rules for manipulating sentences expressed in this language. Next, this chapter discusses how formalization of this should enable automation of logical reasoning, and then this book summarizes the current state of logic technology and its application. Last but not least, this book concludes with this book in this chapter 1 concludes with a reading guide for the remainder of the books. That's all for chapter 1 in logic books. Thank you.
Propositional logic. In this book, the author shall use the syntax and semantics associated with the chapter C of the relational logic. Syntax refers to the rules used to create or convert language, symbols and terms, which contrast the semantics of the language concerned with its meaning. The argument is logically valid if and only if there is no interpretation of the subject-specific terms under which the premises are all true and the conclusion is false. This approach is a fundamental extension of the techniques of the pre-introduced truth table. Truth tables have a structured validation test for any deductive statement. This means that the validity of the arguments can be formalized using both methods. The methods of the truth table is used to test the satisfaction of each truth assignment one by one to see if any of the correct task meets the input sentence. This method is simple, but it is very expensive for all the smallest problems. In the next chapter is satisfiability. The task of determining whether a group of statements in propositional logic is satisfiable is known as the propositional satisfiability problem, or known as SAT. The truth table method for testing satisfiability examines each truth assignment individually to verify if it satisfies the input phrases. For all but the simplest issues, the method is simple but prohibitively expensive. The backtracking uses a mathematical tree research to investigate partial truth assignments. When a partial assignment is found to falsify at least one input sentence, all extension of the partial assignments can be eliminated from the search space. Simplification is a technique that simplifies the input set of sentences based on the current partial truth assignment.
For the fourth item I get from this book is about propositional proof. Proof technique gives an choice way of checking logical entanglement that address this problem. In many cases, it is reasonable to create a proof of conclusion from a set of premises that an output lot smaller than the fact test for the language. Moreover, it is frequently available to discover such proof with much less work than it is indispensable to take a look at the competency level. This topic begins with a discussion of simple linear proof. Next, move on to structured proof, where proof can be nursed inside of other proofs. Once both linear and structured proof have been seen, this book shows how they are combined in the popular phase proof system. Finally, finish with definition for soundness and complete. Next, I learn about propositional resolution. Propositional resolution is a powerful tool of inference for propositional logic. Using propositional resolution, it is possible to build a theorem proof that is sound and complete for all of propositional logic. The search space using the propositional resolution is much smaller than for standard propositional logic proof system. There are variations of language of propositional logic like classical form. After that, we learn about principal resolution.
Relational logic is an extension of propositional logic that adds some language features such as constants, variables, and quantifiers. Simple statements have more structure in relational logic than in propositional logic. Furthermore, we may express information about numerous objects without enumerating them using variables and quantifiers. And we can indicate the existence of satisfy certain conditions without specifying which item they are. Relational logic syntax begins with object constants, function constant, and relational constants. Relational sentences are the building blocks upon which more complicated sentences are constructed. Simpler phrases are combined with logical operators to generate logical sentences. There are 5 sorts of logical statements in the form of relational logic used here: negation, conjunction, disjunction, implication, and equivalence. Next, extending the Fitch system for propositional logic with 4 extra rules to cope with quantifiers yields a Fitch system for relational logic. We may use the universal introduction rule to reason from arbitrary statements to universally quantified versions of those phrases. The universal elimination rule enables us to reason from a universally quantified statement to a version of the sentence goal in which the universally quantified variable is substituted with an acceptable word.
In this book, we will learn about the method of numbering for a sentence. In mathematical logic in automate theorem proving, resolution is a rule of inference leading to a refutation, complete theorem proving technique for a sentence in propositional logic and first order logic. Resolution and fish are similarly powerful. Given a fix of sentence, resolution can derive the empty clause from the clausal shape of the sentence if, and best if fish can discover a evidence of a contradiction. The clause produced by a resolution rule is sometimes called a resolvent. So, based on this book, we can see that resolution is important at that time because the search of space becomes smaller. Next, in logic, we can learn the other method of numbering in sentence that called induction. Method of reasoning from a part to a whole, from particulars to general, or from the individual to the universal. Logicians distinguish between deductive logic, which is its inference in which the conclusion follows necessarily from the premise, or drawing new proposition out of premise in which there lie latent and inductive logic. But the problem earlier subsumed under the induction are considered to be concern of the methodology of the natural science, and logic is generally taken to mean deductive logic.
This article is good to read for students and for everyone. That is because this article emerged from more than 10 years of experience in teaching the logical foundation of artificial. And this article has 20 years of experience in teaching logic for computer scientists. And the most important thing in this article is leave the students with a deeper understanding of what logic is all about. That's all. Thank you.
Finally, we may learn how structures or process are apply in logical reasoning from this book. Several instances of the usage of premise to achieve accurate results are shown. It teaches us that in order to reach accurate conclusion and outcomes in logical thinking, every component relating to what we are working on must be considered, even if it is minor, because it might have an influence or effect on the outcome of our thinking. Will give an ability to individual to think in a disciplined manner or base his thought on facts and evidence is known as his logical thinking skills. Very simply, logical thinking skills mean incorporating logic into one's thinking process whenever analyzing a problem in order to come up with a solution. From logic also, one can detect fallacies in a statement that can form an understanding and belief in a piece of information.